This podcast is part of the Midwest Podcast Network. Find out more about our other shows and how to support our network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Welcome to Gone to Texas, a podcast about AMC's Preacher. My name is Alex, and I have not read any of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
And I'm Nick, and I have read all of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
Today we will be discussing Season 2, Episode 3 of the AMC series titled Damsels. While we will not be spoiling any of the comic and by extension any future plot lines of the show, we will be discussing the details of the series through Season 2, Episode 3, so pause this podcast and go catch up on the show before you listen to the rest of our episode. You can find more episodes of our podcast at g2tpodcast.com. That's the letter G, number 2, letter T, podcast.com. We're also G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can send feedback to g2tpodcast@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Preacher or our podcast. This week, we did get a little bit of listener feedback. Christopher on Twitter, that's at GrundyRadioX, said, I actually just discovered and listened to your whole first season of podcast a week ago, and I'm about to start season 2. The hype is real, guys. Thank you, Christopher, for coming to our show.
Thank you.
Love to know how you found it. Please let me know on Twitter when you hear this.
Yes.
But thanks for listening. We hope you continue to enjoy our podcast.
Tell your friends
Yes,
about
please.
Preacher, and if they happen to want to hear a show, too.
Yeah, tell them about ours.
Yep.
So, yeah. Not much else other than that. We can get right into our recap of Season 2, Episode 3, titled Damsels. In the teaser, we open on Eugene's memory of his interaction with Tracy Loach that led to her brain-dead state and Eugene's disfigurement. It turns out this is Eugene reliving this moment of his life in hell, much like the Saint of Killers. And the holographic projector that's in his cell block breaks, and an official of some sort calls all the units down to that cell block.
The hell projector.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I will note the title sequence did come back.
Yeah.
And I like that Ian Coletti's thing is just that projector spinning. And like the way that they layered the titles this season is actually pretty interesting. I'm wondering if the clips behind them are going to change.
I was wondering that also.
They hid Noah Taylor.
A lot of them were, a lot of the clips that we saw were in this episode too.
Yeah. So but there were a few that even weren't actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, that's, we said, okay, the teaser not there, or the opener not there, whatever, last week, but it's fine to have it back too.
Yeah, I forgot. I kind of forgot that I love the style of the titles. I just don't really like the song.
No,
it's okay. It's just really boilerplate.
Yeah, it sounds like me making a song for our podcast.
It feels like royalty-free music that
Yeah.
they were like, we'll put that in as a temp track, and then they were like, you know what? Who cares?
It's like they didn't want to pay for source music of some kind to put over it. They didn't want to go with the obligatory Son of a Preacher Man or something like that.
Right.
But, yeah. So, Eugene. Nice to see Eugene back.
Nice to see Eugene as Eugene.
Yeah, without the arse face
it's
going on.
Pretty striking.
It is.
Yeah.
He's a pretty adorable young man
Yeah.
without that disfigurement.
Yeah,
on
he
his
looks
face.
like Big Boy or like.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a Pit Boy from like that's him basically.
Yeah, he's got a real like cherubic face. He's just like super cute.
The
round-faced guy.
The shot of him, like, so the scene opens on black. You hear Tracy leaving a voicemail for him, and then it cuts to Eugene riding through the streets on his bike with this really heroic music swell going on, and I just thought it was really like that. It was really funny to me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go save the girl kind of thing.
Yeah, I chuckled because it was in such contrast to everything else about him in the show so far.
Yeah,
where he's just the worst luck.
Yep.
And everything's bad. And this one moment was just really hilarious.
Yeah. It was one little moment of kind of glory until it all kind of turns to shit.
And I just immediately was like, oh, man, I don't want to watch what happens next.
I know. It's a very, despite kind of knowing what was going to come, at least, like, it was weird to experience Tracy blowing part of her head off. And,
Dude.
like, it was pretty brutal.
Yeah, and poor Eugene just relegated to the friend zone so hard.
Yeah.
Not even the friend zone, the you make me want to kill myself zone.
Yeah.
Crazy. I was like, because when he talked her down off the ledge and like took it away from her, I was like, okay, so how's it gonna happen? I mean, there's no way he aims that thing at her.
Yeah.
And then the way it happened, I was like, oh, God, that's so mean.
It's even worse.
So
for
mean.
Eugene,
I know. That's terrible.
Poor Eugene.
Such a good scene, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my first note of the episode I wrote. The 180 this show has made me do on Eugene, because I don't like Eugene in the comic.
Yeah.
Like, at all.
Yeah.
And he's great on this show.
He's fantastic.
Really good. But at the same time, and we'll talk more when we get to it, just about what he's doing in the show, I kind of don't care anymore, if that makes any sense. Like, I guess until the rules and how hell functions, I guess until that's a little more thoroughly explained, I'm not really worried about Eugene right now. I kind of want to focus more on what's going on with Jesse and Tulip and Cassidy.
Yeah.
So right now, like, when it only cut away like twice in this episode, if that, back to him. I was kind of
we kind of got it was almost kind of bookended.
Yeah, and I kind of almost thought, like, you either need to show me more of this or just not do it.
Yeah, like and maybe episode 3 is just going to be like, or 4 is going to be, here's Eugene.
I hope so.
That's the weird thing about Better Call Saul, which I know you haven't watched, but there's episodes that are like very Saul centric, and there's episodes that are very Mike centric.
Okay.
And it even, like, at points people are like, this is kind of just two completely different shows.
It sounds good, though.
It's very interesting, and I think it works very well for that show, but I wonder if they are willing to do that in Preacher, like if they would be willing to be like, here's 40 minutes of Eugene.
See, I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't want I wouldn't want, like, kind of the Game of Thrones treatment where I'm like, hey, I haven't seen this character in 5 episodes.
So maybe they need to give us like a half and half until things meet up or something. Like, give us... I think we just need a little bit more Eugene.
Just a little more.
Like you said, things are very nebulous right now, and to give us just the breadcrumb on either end of the episode was
they're really breadcrumbing the bejesus out of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot of stuff that they're teasing,
sprinkling here and there.
Yeah, like we finally saw Hair Star. I guess they finally saw his nameplate, so I can call him by his name. And then they don't do anything, and you're like, oh, there he is. Next week, maybe. So I'm kind of okay with being in suspense. I mean, I'm sort of in suspense because I kind of know what's coming, but at the same time I don't. So I feel how do you feel about all that? Are you okay?
I've been okay with it right now. Right now, it takes a little time for those kinds of things to grate on me, because I tend to be okay with a little more place setting than you are. Speaking as somebody who's continued to watch Game of Thrones where you haven't, you know. And I don't fault you for not having the patience to sit there and watch all these like tiny chess moves happen in an episode. So if it gets to that level of things, especially in a show that hasn't been like that necessarily, then it would be maybe a different story. But I think because I like all of the characters enough, I'm okay with when some of them make more granular moves in episodes rather than
like reserve judgment for like halfway through the season.
Yeah. And if it kind of like if it feels like we're just not making enough progress, like it's like season 2 of The Walking Dead. Like if we're at the farm the whole season, fuck that. I don't need
another
that
show that
in
made
my
me
life.
Stop in my tracks and go, I'm going home.
And it was as far as I think it wasn't really worth it, but. Hopefully Preacher's not there.
Even Marvel's gotten with 2 of their shows now. I've stopped and gone, you know what? I'm good. I've gotten my fill, and I don't like what I'm having. Yeah.
Is there any other stuff in this teaser that we should maybe mention? I mean,
I don't think so. I think
Tracy, like this removed any and all, like it removed a lot of sympathy for Tracy, which I think it's kind of shitty to do that to like,
someone who seems like a victim.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. You never know in season 1 what happened.
Yeah.
And you think, based on how Eugene acts, you kind of think like he's a nice guy. Like he probably didn't mean anyone any harm, but they never bother to really go into it. They never even bother to say like, oh, he's innocent or anything like that. And I'm not sure if they try to say that she murdered herself or if he murdered her, because he's not in jail, obviously.
No, and I don't. Well, his father's the sheriff, so obviously that's a tough situation.
Well, it just seems like there's kind of some understanding in the town that he drove her to shoot herself or something.
I think, yeah.
Whereas her really hilarious and terrible suicide note, he burned, so
nobody knows what she was actually
right. What a
attempting
what
to
a
do.
dork she was.
Yeah. Yeah, like the idea that she's gonna kill herself because her boyfriend cheated on her with a 5 out of 10 is just kind of, and then she's like, my friend can have my bunny, but everything else needs to stay as like a shrine
so
to
people
me.
can remember me.
Yeah,
these are the dudes I had sex with, but it was only anal, so I could
still go to heaven. Yeah, like it's they painted her in the worst possible light.
Yeah, here's the thing. I usually take issue with that in movies. It seems like frequently in films there's, especially whenever there's anything involving high schoolers, you always have really cartoonish like bully characters that are stupid and don't make, like, Flash Thompson is the best example. In every Spider-Man movie there's Flash Thompson and he is a cartoon character.
Yep.
And you're like, this sort of thing just I don't think really happens like this anymore.
Yep.
Or ever. And yet we all have this idea that this is how bullies in high school are, and it's just so over the top and like ridiculous. I'm always kind of like, ugh, it kind of pulls me out of it. And all of her behavior in this episode was very kind of in line with what usually turns me off. But because pretty much every character in the show,
is up to 11. It's kind of like
I was like, this fits right in with this reality.
Yeah,
and poor
that's
Eugene still likes her.
Yeah,
poor kid.
Eugene feeling any guilt over that situation in general, like I don't think.
Yeah, I mean he like saved her life technically.
Yeah,
but is it much of a life? Well, maybe not. But it is.
Well, not only did he save her life, but the idea that she shot herself after
the only nice person to her, like, gave her like a peck. It was like barely a kiss.
Yeah. It sucks for Eugene.
Yeah.
On to Act 1. The group is en route to New Orleans, and Tulip and Jesse argue about their destination while repeatedly listening to "A Walk to the Peak," the jazz song that God requested at the strip joint. Tulip protests and is very apprehensive to head there, but after arriving in New Orleans, the gang pick a random jazz club that appears to have someone that may know more about God, but it turns out that it's just a dog fetish sex show.
Did you look up "A Walk to the Peak"? Is it a real song?
It is a real song.
Okay.
The 14 best songs no one's ever heard of
probably not real.
Is not actually real, but it's perfect.
It's very funny. Yeah.
That if that came right out of Seth Rogen's brain, I'd be like, yeah.
That was funny.
Right.
I liked that.
It's a pretty
it
good.
It felt like something out of Portlandia. Like they got a good laugh out of me. I was like, where's Fred? Is Fred Armisen going to be the upright bass player?
Yeah. But yeah, so "A Walk to the Peak" is an actual song.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I really, really love that. The idea that jazz is going to be this big theme for this season. I think that's really cool.
It's pretty awesome. And it seems like in all these jazz clubs, they're kind of like pulling like actual musicians to come and play a bunch of great jazz, which is kind of fun that we might have a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's just a cool soundtrack to the show. It works really well.
Yeah. And certainly, like it's nice that they shot in New Orleans because it feels like New Orleans.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't feel like this is somebody shooting a location to be New Orleans.
Yeah, I think New Orleans is pretty awesome historically in movies. It's always been used pretty well.
Yeah,
everyone kind of knows, or they have this idea of New Orleans, and I like this movie this show really leans into the weirdness of it.
You really can't you can't fake New Orleans. Like, I feel like if somebody was like, oh, hey, look, this is New Orleans, and it was like shot in Cleveland, you would know even if you've never been to New Orleans, just from like the fact that most of the time somebody's portraying New Orleans, they're shooting there.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it has so much character.
Yeah, to recreate it would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
It'd be expensive and not true. I mean, and New Orleans is fortunate in that way that the imagery of it is so widely known that people could kind of, like you're saying, they might be able to call it out and be like, that doesn't feel like when the RoboCop remake came out.
Yeah, they came to Detroit.
And we were laughing in the theater because we were like, none of this is Detroit.
Well, no, there's a part where he gets on a bridge and we're like, if that's in Detroit, why is he going to Canada? Because that's literally the only bridge you've got in Detroit.
RoboCop is heading back back to Canada. I know. Yeah, it was hilarious. It was like that kind of stuff. And there's like this shot of him on the bridge on his motorcycle, and I was like, maybe in every other territory or other states this moment was
this
cool.
Is passable.
But like our theater was literally laughing because we all knew like this is dumb and this movie's dumb. So there's some trivia for you if you didn't know. Detroit has no bridges that go anywhere other than Canada.
Yes.
And we have a couple of those. Mm-hmm. But that's the only place RoboCop's going, unless he went out of his jurisdiction for that scene.
Unless somewhere in the future they've made a bridge to somewhere else in Detroit.
Just overland.
Maybe he was going to Belle Isle.
It's from Campus Marsh. It's right to Belle Isle to save the weekenders the drive.
Yep.
Down Jefferson. Yeah, that's funny. But anyway, that always is a little painful in movies when they try to do that. Well, even like in Four Brothers, that's supposed to be in Detroit, and there's signs on like the liquor stores that are in French because they shot it in like Quebec or something.
Yeah, or Vancouver.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's in Quebec probably.
And I was like, oof, nope.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, it's
you,
cool.
You were saying that you like the jazz is the theme throughout this season.
I was saying that, but I don't know where I'm going with it yet. I just keep having these little notes where I'm like, it's really weirdly perfect. It feels like the kind of thing that was in the book, and to my recollection, it's not. But it's the perfect kind of like sound bed for the show.
Maybe it's something that Rogen and Goldberg really brought.
Yeah, even though you would think like it'd be like a western, you would think you'd want to hear like country or that kind of thing. But like jazz works really well, and it works in harmony with the character of Jesse really well.
Yeah,
and his quest.
Despite him like needing to learn or understand it, even because we're seeing a bit of that. Like it's not jazz doesn't come to him naturally from what we're seeing.
Exactly.
So. In the car, Jesse, they start talking about swamps, and because Tulip starts complaining about New Orleans, and Jesse has the quote, "I like the city fine. It's the swamps I don't like." Mm-hmm. Cassidy says, "Why is that?" And Jesse says, "It's a family thing."
Yes.
Does that line up with any knowledge you have?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
So it lines up with a lot of stuff that actually happened in this episode.
Well, yeah, and that's true too. But that.
Well, I mean, for Jesse, in terms of like his family. Family history.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
There's oh god, I can't wait. Again, they're just teasing they're sprinkling. They're teasing some really good stuff, and I think it's just phenomenal.
I'm glad that stuck out to me, and there was another swamp moment later on.
There is a little arc in the books that takes place in New Orleans. I guess there's a couple technically, but there's one that happens a little bit later on that as soon as they were talking about going to New Orleans, it was actually the first thing I thought of for some reason, even before the thing Jesse's talking about that involves Cassidy.
Okay.
And I'm curious if they're going to explore it. I think it would be amazing in the show, and I think Joe Gilgan would just crush the material if they're going to give it to him.
Interesting.
So we'll see.
All right.
The dog.
Yeah, the dog moment.
I think that might come back around.
The extreme close-up on the dog at the end, kind of like...
On the eye?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I saw that in the title sequence.
Yeah.
And I thought, because I instantly, you know what it is. It's like someone in a dog gimp suit. And I immediately drew a connection to a character from the book.
Okay.
And I was like, that's really exciting because it's something that I want to see show up. But... obviously, in this episode, they kind of just walked away from it. Whether or not they are going to get back to that character, I don't... That character might still come around, but I think I'm just, like, red herringing myself.
Yeah, mate. I mean, they walked away from it, and then another girl later on says to him, you should check out the dog show.
Yeah, and so it kind of seemed like maybe a Rogen Goldberg-y kind of joke. Because they like to do that. They like to, like, do their own little callbacks within the same episode.
But the idea, like, none of that really invokes God to me, so I don't know why other people in New Orleans would make that connection.
Yeah.
Other than it being a joke. So maybe there is something to it
that's
later.
Like the slang. Like if you want to see God, it's, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the slang of having a good time.
Because God is dog backwards.
That's also possible. Maybe everybody in New Orleans is dyslexic.
Maybe they've all got their idea of God backwards.
That's the English teacher moment right there.
Is there an English teacher? Something about the close-up of the eye was really weird. Mm-hmm. Did they do that with the dog in season 1 that was running around? The mascot? Well, there was a dog, right?
Yeah, there was I can't remember if it was a dog or a bear or what he was. So no, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that was hearkening back to a moment or not. It just kind of seemed like...
It seemed like they were drawing attention to it for a reason.
Yes.
So we'll see.
We'll see if our analysis of 10 seconds in the show pays off later.
Of Gimp Dog.
Anything else? Mexi Jazz was funny to me. I thought that was good.
Yeah, it was cute. It made me chuckle, I guess. Maybe it made me grin. I don't think I chuckled.
Anything else in Act 1?
A lot of these little like cutesy exchanges between Tulip and Cassidy, with Jesse kind of not in the loop, they're starting to get a little. The car conversations, I think, are getting tiring for me.
Yeah,
I'm getting a little fed up of like the little banter and like stuff in the car. It just, I think, especially in regards to that scene, clearly Tulip's hiding something, and Jesse seems to think so, and he's too patient with her, or he knows her too well to like press it.
Yeah,
and he's obviously not going to use the word on her, but at the same time, there's not a lot of indication, I guess. In Cooper's portrayal, it's not really coming across his face as much in terms of like he understands what's going on, but he's going to let it slide, or like he's going to choose to let her tell him on her own time.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like staring at her, and then like the subject gets changed eventually, and it feels a little dissatisfying. It feels like we as the viewer aren't really being shown what the characters are feeling in this moment, and that's a little frustrating. And I'm not sure why, though.
To me, though, it kind of feels more along the lines of that Jesse's just distracted by the mission.
That's true.
And so he's not... You say that he's patient with Tulip, but I think he's kind of impatient with the, like... He's probably like, you're going to tell me at some point anyway. So I'm pushing you aside till the words come out of your mouth because I want to find God.
That's a good point.
Is kind of how I was reading the situation. But I would get where it's kind of like you're even Cassidy's not actually in the loop until maybe this episode.
Yeah.
It seemed like maybe she was going to tell him something, but it happened during a commercial break if it did. So, yeah, the idea that Jesse clearly knows something's going on. Like, I think I can logic it away as he's distracted by the mission. Whether or not that's what they're trying to portray in the show, we'll have to
I guess. I
I
think maybe I'm just getting a little worn out of the like extended scenes of people not talking to each other about what's going on, because I guess we as the audience already know.
Yeah,
maybe
we know some of it.
I'd just rather start getting to some content, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
instead of just this thing in the car of why not New Orleans. Well, here's some funny quips about jazz in Mexico.
Yeah,
like I just felt like it didn't need it, you know?
Yeah,
the show's funny enough in its little tiny moments. It doesn't need like these little scenes in the car of like, because I mean, I think if you took every car scene in the season so far, it probably follows a very similar structure.
Yeah.
And it's starting to feel like they shot all these car scenes in one day and just like, here's
on
the
a
next
green
page.
screen.
Here's the next page in the script. Yeah. That's why it's not the foreskin scene. It's the Mexi Jazz scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely see that.
Anyway.
Too. We don't
I know it's a road show, so there probably should be scenes in cars, but
yeah. But they could be a little more deftly
spice it up.
Handled. Act 2. Tulip bails on Jesse and Cassidy, follows suit to number 1, pry more information out of her predicament, about her predicament, and number 2, Cassidy told his friend Denis that they would stay with him. Tulip runs into an old friend, Mrs. Barbaret, and appears to be unhappy with running into anyone because she thinks that they will talk to Victor, presumably. And Jesse also gets laughed at when asking for God in another bar and ends up smashing a glass on a man's face. And then finally, Cassidy and Tulip find Denis, who only speaks French and does not appear to have that much of a great relationship with Cassidy. But it's actually Denis.
Denis, yeah.
Number 1, I guess we can start there with Denis. I contacted a friend that I was going to send a clip to translate the French for me, but it turns out that Reddit already did the work.
Oh, good, of course.
So Reddit says, or translated loosely as, it's not Denis, it's Denis. What do you want now? You always want something, don't you? Perhaps it's nothing, or it'll be different this time. After you come into my home, you turn my apartment into a pigsty. You eat and drink like crazy, and you party all night. And where are your other prostitutes? I'm too old for this. So
I have a feeling that Denis, this is actually not based on any real knowledge of the book other than some other characters. He's probably a dude that Cassidy's been rolling around for like decades.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking.
He was probably
too.
a young man that he was buds with, and now he's just old.
He eventually got sick of Cassidy's
shit.
He
must speak English.
Yeah.
In order to understand the shit Cassidy's saying, or he just doesn't care enough to like bother with it. But yeah, it's. I think there's more to that relationship than we are led to believe there is, because they don't even really play at many hints. They just kind of put it in front of you like, here's this, and no one's going to act like it's anything unusual.
Yeah.
To kind of maybe make you not focus in on it so much, like the dog. Like we're more like focused on the dog gimp. But like the scene is just played very plainly. Like here's this guy he knows who doesn't really like him, and we're gonna leave it at that for the most part. Even though Tulip kind of clues Jesse in on it, like something's off, but I'm not even gonna be that suspicious about it.
Yeah.
Like these two, both Jesse and Tulip are pretty preoccupied with other stuff, and they're not bothering to kind of think further about what Cassidy's got going on, which is pretty representative of the relationship in the books. Yeah, like I said, he's kind of relegated to being the sidekick for most of the time, and then all of this weight and backstory of Cassidy comes crashing down on you, and it's really good. So I don't know if they're going to do that in the show. It kind of seems a logical route.
It sounds like they're headed there with one of the later scenes, but
yeah,
it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb, this Denis and Cassidy relationship. But and it's weird because Cassidy seems very endeared kind of to Denis, and in a way he's very like and he's also like misrepresenting Denis to Tulip and Jesse for some reason. So it's not like it's weird.
That seems to be another indicator that he knows him from a long time ago. Because you know how you might have like memories of somebody a certain way that you haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Or you may even say like, oh, there's this guy, he's great because he was your buddy in college 10 years ago.
But you've grown to be different people.
And maybe you have, but when you bring that out in each other,
yeah.
maybe you bring out, or you at least see that in the other person, even if it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
So like you might introduce somebody and they're like, I don't get what you're talking about. Like that person's not fun. You'd be like, really? You don't think he's fun? Oh, well, this one time. You'd be like, well, yeah, this one time back then.
Yeah.
But that's not who the guy is anymore.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a whole lot else to talk about with this segment. Mrs. Barbary, is that a ring any bells?
Truthfully, I have no idea what's going on with Tulip right now.
Okay.
This all feels fresh.
Uncharted territory.
Unless it's going to tie back into something that I do know, but for now it feels like something fresh.
Okay.
But Tulip's pretty different.
Yeah, and you said that back in the first season.
She's pretty different.
There's more of Jesse and Tulip bickering and Jesse kind of trying to get at what the deal is in the scene, but once again, we kind of spoke about that.
He definitely gets frustrated this time and just goes, whatever. I got shit to do.
Yeah,
I'm looking for God. How important are your problems? Kind of thing.
Exactly. So we get to Act 3. Tulip still won't fill Cassidy in as to what has her spooked. Jesse finally gets a lead to see the singer at La Chamanique named Lara Featherstone, who ultimately gets kidnapped by several men in white.
So did they say her full name? They just said Lara, right?
I think they just said Lara. She's credited as Lara Featherstone.
Yes, she is.
Okay.
And that makes a big difference in who that character is.
Interesting. Jesse uses Genesis to stop the people in white and fight them as he rescues Lara. So she's really good. She was in the first season of Better Call Saul, playing a fairly important role, and is like killed it. She was very good. So I'm excited to see her
stunning
in the show.
She is stunning.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw her, I was like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I thought of, I'm actually reading another comic right now called Fatale.
Yeah.
Which is by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, who's probably the most potent team up in comics, at least in my opinion. And it's a really amazing series. I'm on like the 4 out of 5 trades, so I'm almost done. But the central character is this woman named Josephine.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw, what's her name, the actress?
I'll have to find it real quick.
Anyway.
You saw Lara.
As soon as I saw Lara, I was like, whoa, she would be perfect for that role. Because she's like very magnetic, not only in the way she looks, and she's got like kind of a like 50s Hollywood glam to her.
Yeah.
But her presence is really strong.
Her name is Julie Ann Emery.
Yes.
I didn't recognize her in the blonde wig at all. And then as soon as she took it off, I was like, she's from Better Call Saul.
There it is.
Yeah. So, main things here that I wanted to talk about. We've got the little moment with Denis with the M&Ms here, giving us a little more context to the relationship.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Showing you that, you know, you know what? And in that moment, I'm just now realizing it seems a lot like Cassidy's trying to get back into good graces, almost like he knows that he did something to upset Denis, And he's trying to like be like, oh yeah, you know, he's trying to be like fun and playful of like the Three Stooges is good in any language. And kind of the idea that he comments on that and that Denis is only speaking to him in French. I don't know. There's a bunch of puzzle pieces laying in front of me right now, and I don't know what they all lay out to be. It could be one of those things where it's just wacky Cassidy, but it could also be something else.
No, I think what you're seeing is, or what you're noticing is pretty representative of what makes Cassidy Cassidy.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll probably just leave it there for now.
Okay. That's fine. Well, speaking a little bit more about Cassidy, we see...
Well, all right.
We see Tulip kind of unraveling and pacing around the room a little bit about this Mrs. Barbaret situation. Cassidy's just kind of like, we should leave. And she's all, Jesse wouldn't want to do that. He only wants to find God. And Cassidy gets pretty angry that when she suggests that he can't help, and the direct quote is, "No, you're treating me like an idiot Irish sidekick, and I think you need to tell me what's going on." And when he said that, I was like, maybe we're going to get to where Nick wants to be, as of our discussion last week of like the show's being very self-aware about where Cassidy is in that moment.
Yes.
So it sounds like they're going to try and get to a place where he breaks out of that and becomes more of a solid part of the team. But who knows when that's going to happen.
Right.
Cassidy seems aware of the fact that he's not.
That they don't necessarily consider him on the same level.
Yep.
Yeah, or that he doesn't have anything to do. I do like, this is kind of rewinding a bit, but I like the relationship between Cassidy and Jesse, like in regards to the bar scene. Like when they leave the first bar, they keep making, or the dog part, they keep making jokes about it. Like they keep having little one-liners about the dog, and while Tulip's looking around like concerned, and they're just kind of like they're kind of laughing and like making jokes. And then when she decides to go back to the motel, and he's like, "Where's she going?" And she's like, or when he tells her, like, "All right, I'll see you later," and he kind of claps Cassidy on the back, like, "Let's go, pal."
Yeah,
that was really good.
Yeah,
and I really want to see that like hardcore bro out between Cassidy and Jesse, because it's super important. Because like in the books, they're like obnoxiously best friends. Like they love each other so much that it's like when you make a new friend, when you're a little bit younger, and you just like literally want to do everything with them and like call them like, oh, like about every little thing. Yeah, and it's hilarious and it's adorable in the book. And like they just and Tulip's even like, you guys like each other too much, because then Tulip's actually. She starts to get a little suspicious of Cassidy, because she's kind of the one who's like, we don't really know much about him. Like, and she doesn't really trust him. She thinks he's a little shifty. She's like, he's kind of a junkie. He's a vampire. Like, you think he's just good for a laugh, and he's like your buddy, but do you really know him kind of thing? And it's easy when you click with somebody and you become friends with them to just kind of overlook a lot of that and just be like, oh, I'm getting everything I need out of this relationship right here on this level. Yeah. Before it like really deepens into a deeper friendship. And so in the books, she's just she kind of has her guard up around him slightly. And I think in the show, she kind of does a little bit. It just isn't, it's not that evident. But she kind of... Right now,
they're kind of on the same team.
Yeah, she kind of lets it down in certain angles, because she's kind of a degenerate also. She's not a degenerate, but you know what I mean? Like, she's been on the wrong side of the law pretty much all the time.
And she feels the need to hide things from Jesse.
Exactly. So he's kind of her natural confidant, because she's like, on the one hand, I have more in common with Jesse because of all this, but on the other hand, Cassidy is who I am maybe at my core a lot more like. Yeah. Because Jesse can do really evil things, and he'll still think he's the good guy. That's kind of like part of his character. Is he'll think he's doing something for the right reason, where if you really stand back and look at it objectively, be like, no, what you did was really bad. Yeah. But Cassidy is at least a little more like, he knows when he does bad stuff. Yep. But he chooses to just be okay with it. But he at least knows. He'll admit it, whereas Jesse would never admit it. So Tulip, it's kind of interesting watching Tulip in the show. She kind of is teetering between the two guys. Whereas in the book, she's way more like, I'm not that interested in being friends with Cassidy. Interesting. So it's interesting. And then in the book, he feels even more relegated to like the sidekick. And as a result, he pursues Jesse harder, and Jesse reciprocates because he thinks Cassidy's the bomb. And then Tulip gets angrier, and then it just like this three-way cycle just kind of feeds itself. So we're not really...
It's like a weirder love triangle.
Yeah.
almost like a reverse.
It's like two dudes in their friendship and then the girl. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the show, there's not really any animosity between any of them or any friction.
Yeah.
They all get along pretty well as this little family unit. And so I'm kind of waiting for that to kind of come out a bit, because as of right now, like everything's just pretty peachy as far as the character relationships are concerned.
Yeah.
Which is okay, I guess, because these guys probably have a roadmap of like 6 seasons or something like that. So there's time.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
yeah,
I think that watching these relationships evolve is pretty interesting. And Tulip is so far, in a way, the most interesting character, because I still can't quite get a beat on where she's going or where she's been. So it's
if you're gonna meet up with Comic Tulip and exactly like what?
Oh, it's already way we're pretty far gone, which is great.
On to Lara a bit. So, she's singing a song called Almost Blue. I didn't really look into it too much. I didn't know if you had any connections with it, but another nice little jazzy, bluesy performance.
Yep. Yeah, super cool. Like very, very like Dame. Very noir, kind of stumble into a bar and see this like femme fatale.
Yep.
Somebody who's very alluring, and you're like, you want to hear more. And the exchange she has with the barfly is really good about Tallahassee.
Yeah,
it's really good.
He doesn't even know that he's giving her the right answer.
He questions himself.
Yep.
Or it doesn't question her. He just he doubts himself, and then he leaves. And I think that in a female character like that, doubt or like lack of confidence is like the immediate.
They'll go for your neck.
Yep, I don't need you.
Yep.
Goodbye. And Jesse Custer is nothing if not just pure, just bull confidence.
Yep.
And so I was like, I can't wait to watch them start talking. It's probably going to be really electric.
Yeah.
And it was.
We can fast forward a bit to the fight.
Yeah.
I really liked that fight.
God, that fight kicked ass.
Yeah.
That was so good.
Like I was looking at it and just watching it all unfold after me, and it was like, this isn't a normal TV fight where everybody waits their turn, and like he's legitimately fighting like
Dominic
4
Cooper.
guys at once, and it was all him.
Yep.
Like he was totally there. So that was a really impressive fight.
It was really well choreographed. It was really well shot. Really well delivered by him and the stuntman. Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. Nobody was waiting their turn, and it wasn't cutting around it. It was like letting it happen, and it's the kind of thing where like
this wasn't a green grass action scene.
This was like a Daredevil action scene.
This is a Haywire level action scene.
Yeah, except I liked it.
Old joke for you film nerds fans out there.
Yeah, whether we like it or not, we're living in a post Haywire world, and that's just the truth.
Yep.
To be fair, I didn't even finish Haywire, so I can't.
That's fine.
I guess. No, you know what? I need to. If I'm gonna shame it like I have.
I will watch Haywire with you again, because I haven't watched it since I saw it in the theater.
Oh, okay. It's time for a re-examine.
It is.
Yeah, it was great though.
It was really good.
Have a note. Oh, and I lost my shit when I saw who it was in the van, like coming with the white suits and the red ties, spilling out of there.
All the white suited people. Yeah.
They haven't said the name yet, have they? No. Did they say the name? So I'm fairly certain they mentioned the name of it in the first season.
Okay.
Early on. And then it's the kind of thing that just kind of got breezed by and hasn't come back into relevance until now. But basically, the white suits with the red ties are a clear indicator of who this group is from the books.
Okay.
And I've been waiting for them to show up. And it's awesome. Not impatiently, because they wouldn't have had much room in season 1. The little tease that we do get is appropriate enough.
Yeah.
Because season 1 was kind of a different story. But now that they're on the scene, it's going to get so
Things
good.
are going to change.
And they need to be in every episode because they're the best.
Well, it seems like we might get a lot more of them. So, and especially considering that
they are a major, if not primary, source of antagonism in the book. Like it's a very big deal.
Well, because Julianne Emery is in the main credit sequence, like she's a main cast member, so presumably we will see a lot more of them. On to Act 4. Lara informs Jesse that there's an organization bent on world domination that is aware of God's abandonment of his post. She pushes Jesse into using the word on her and skips town. Tulip calls Jesse, presumably to ask for help or tell him what's going on, but she can't find the words and he isn't playing her game. So she goes out to buy some cigarettes, and then we get a little bit about Eugene meeting one of his cellmates, played by Noah Taylor.
Yes.
That looks an awful lot like Hitler.
Oh, he's Hitler.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
Yeah.
All right, let's start at the top of this.
Yep.
Because a lot happened in that.
So Lara talking to Jesse.
Succinctly told, Alex. Well done.
Thank you. We had another shot of the album, the 14 songs, the 14 best songs that you've never heard.
Never heard of, yeah.
Yeah. So she had that in there. That's kind of fun. They had a little moment there. So she's as I'm going to start telling this as we've all watched the episode because we have. She's feeding him this information.
Yes.
She's very much telling Jesse that there's an organization bent on world domination that is aware of God leaving. And they had a man killed for knowing that God had left his post.
Mm-hmm.
As if they're controlling the information for themselves.
Yes.
So that, I mean, and the one thing that I noted, she said the guy's dead, the body washed up in the swamps. I mean, they find dead guys in the swamps all the time, right? Which is another callback to swamps with what Jesse was saying about not liking the swamps. So
Yes.
I thought that was a nice little...
Well, a lot of swamp action.
Nice little sprinkle, because we get a lot of sprinkles.
A lot of sprinkles. Make just a gif of like the Salt Bay. It's the writers of the show sprinkling little nuggets of info.
Yes.
They're seasoning the show with hints.
Yes.
That scene was awesome. It seemed readily apparent to me that she was not on the up and up because she just moved with like this purpose that felt like a spy. It felt very spy.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just another kind of genre trope overlapping because these women are frequently dangerous. And so I was like, she's up to something.
I didn't really notice it too much, especially...
It all seemed like... It just felt a little staged.
It feels a little... Yeah.
Even in the way she got kidnapped right outside and she looked at him as she like, look.
Yeah.
I'm being pulled out of the... Yeah, it was just really funny. But then like the house and like the sitter and the baby, it all felt... I was like, this feels very orchestrated. I didn't know who her... I did not know who her character was while I was watching it. And then it all clicked like later. But... And I was like, something's suspicious here. And maybe it's one of those things where, like, I've already forgotten his name because this is what I do. The preacher from who married his parents, the friend. He just... Why are you laughing?
Because I don't remember it either.
Anyway, he told them...
Mike. That memorable name, Mike.
Classic Mike. Oh, you don't run across that many Mikes.
Nope.
He didn't he basically say, he said don't trust anyone but each other or something like that, and even then he basically said don't trust anybody but yourself or each other or something like that, or don't trust anyone,
something like that. Yeah.
So I feel like that was kind of sticking in the back of my mind, and because in the book Jesse he will continually run into people with an agenda, so maybe that's kind of built in too, and at the same time he will walk into any situation like whatever, like come what may, and I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
But in the scene, I was just like, it feels like something. And then immediately when she started talking and she was telling him everything, I was like, okay, this is good. And then when she started pressing him, like, now how did you? Now tell me again. And she was pressing him. I was like, okay, she wants to know. She knows that he did something, and she wants him to say it. She wants him to like admit to it, to cop to it. And so then when he finally does, I was like, she's like. It just felt like a spy doing, plying her trade and extracting information from him without him knowing that he's doing it.
I appreciated all of that in retrospect because at the time it really did feel to me like she obviously knows of these people and she's wondering what in the world could ever get them to stop.
Yeah.
And so she's certainly hep to the fact that he's got something that made them stop.
Yep.
But it did not hit me that she wanted proof of concept or something like that.
Well, it felt like a scene from like a trial where he needed to say it. He needed to admit it so that it was in the air.
Or like somebody trying to get somebody on a wire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in that moment I was like, who is she with? Because I was like, she was getting kidnapped by them.
Yeah.
She wouldn't be with... Is she with them? And then I began to wonder, I was like, but who is she? Like I couldn't place who she was from the comic. So...
Yeah, that's
interesting.
It
was a good scene.
So then we get to the moment of Jesse and Tulip on the phone, essentially bickering again about what we already talked about. Jesse notices a poster for a jazz club called Angelville, or like a show called Angelville.
Like an attraction.
And he sees the gear with the skull in it that's tattooed on him and was on the arm that killed his father from the first season.
Yeah.
So we're sprinkling more.
Oh,
Even more sprinkles.
Do you remember? Yeah, nothing but sprinkles.
Yep.
Do you remember? I'm going to clue you into this just because I want to do it. Do you remember when he's talking about his mom?
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you remember what her name is?
Langelle. Interesting.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I thought that was a little convenient that her last name was Angel, like Angel-ish.
Oh, yeah.
So, Langelle.
Ooh,
All right.
I got a little goosebump just by watching that look on your face.
Yeah.
Man, I can't wait. Oh,
no,
this
that's
is going to
cool.
be so good. This is going to be such a good season.
But yeah, they're not.
Oh, the other thing, the noise, the sound effect that played in the background when he was looking at the poster.
Oh, really? I didn't notice.
Didn't notice?
Nope.
That's the third time I think that sound has come around.
In this season?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's important.
I wonder if it's anywhere in season 1.
It may be.
Is it like, are we talking about like an audio cue, or is it just like a little bit of score, or
it's a cue.
Okay.
I mean, it happened. It definitely happened twice. I think it happened 3 times. I think it happened twice.
Was the one with the treasure chest in the aquarium? Interesting.
Oh yeah.
All right. Interesting.
Oh, this is great. This is the part where our show gets really exciting. Where I'm just gonna
We're noticing things.
I'm gonna be really annoying in every
and
episode.
You're feeding me even more breadcrumbs.
Yeah. You're gonna be so full on sprinkles and breadcrumbs. That's your diet.
Yep. Let's see. Tulip leaving to go get cigarettes. We'll talk about in the next segment. But Eugene, finding out his cell is unlocked.
Yeah. Well, she left the door open, right?
I don't know.
And said, "Don't move."
Yeah, she said, "Don't move."
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's something going wrong in hell.
Yeah, hell had a power outage or something.
And I'll tell you right now what my theory. I don't know if it's a theory or what it is, but part of me is wondering if DeBlanc went to hell when he was killed, and he's kind of making good on his, or he's trying to get Eugene out to.
That's an awesome theory that I hadn't thought about. And if DeBlanc rolls up
comes
later,
back, yeah, and maybe Fior could be there too, since he's dead now at the hands of the saint.
perhaps.
But
yeah, Fior.
I wouldn't be heartbroken to see them come back because I think they're a good duo.
Yeah, I kind of would prefer Fior just recede into nothing, because I loved that lingering question, that like really philosophical moment of where do angels go when they die.
That's true.
Like that's the question, and I liked that he was willing to take the leap because his existence was so rough. For him to be reunited with DeBlanc, I feel like would be a little unsatisfying because it's all he really wanted.
Well, but okay, so I mean, it could shake out into the situation of like maybe Fior really didn't know where he was going.
That's true.
I guess it could play out in either
way.
way.
Maybe they go to hell. That's where they go.
Oh yeah, like maybe it was just when angels die at the hand of the saint, they go to hell.
Could be.
Maybe Fior knew that and he wanted to get to DeBlanc, or maybe Fior didn't know that, and he will still maybe end up in DeBlanc.
Maybe he'll get his happiness.
Maybe DeBlanc, or maybe Fior is somewhere in that same block, and DeBlanc's gonna come down and try and figure out what to do here, and they'll run into each other. Essentially,
that would be kind of a good reunion. I guess
we'll get a good reunion. But yeah, anyway,
like Fezzik and Inigo reuniting and Princess Bride.
Yeah,
yeah, we'll see. Noah Taylor
as Hitler.
Noah Taylor has played Hitler before.
Really?
Yes.
In what?
In the movie Max. Which I've seen.
I have not.
A long time ago. That's why when I saw him, I was like, oh, he's typecast now as Hitler. He's played Hitler twice. The movie Max is probably from like 2002 or something like that, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting because I like Noah Taylor, and that's what made me watch it, because I was like, Noah Taylor plays Hitler. That's weird.
Interesting.
And did you find out what year it's from?
2002. You were right.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Yeah, it was good.
Total stab in the dark.
It's a good call.
Yes.
Good pull.
Yeah, it's an okay movie. But Noah Taylor's funny because his German accent's like not good. He still sounds kind of Australian. Yeah. So you're like, it sounds like an Aussie doing a German. So it's kind of funny. I'm like, why did they cast him? They could have done some. It's almost like an in joke. Like maybe like they like that movie, and they're like, "Oh, he was good as Hitler."
Evan Goldberg loved that movie.
I just do Seth Rogen impression every time.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to hear him. Maybe he's gotten better over the years.
It was funny.
It has been 15 years since that movie.
That's true. He's been polishing his... Well, he says one line in it, and right away I started laughing. So I was like, it doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess you don't want to cast too realistic Hitler look-alike at the movie because it's probably like... It's not something you want on your resume.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like that guy, pro-Hitler impersonator. Just don't.
Yeah.
But anyway, here's the thing about that whole thing. You shouldn't really play Hitler for laughs, I feel like. And I feel like there can be no other course of action for Rogen and Goldberg. Like, what are you doing? If you've got Hitler in your show, especially this show, it feels like it's not going to be taken seriously.
So is there any Hitler in the comic?
No.
I mean,
he might be on like a panel somewhere if it shows like the Santa Killer shooting him in the face or something. He's not a character.
That was my first thought when I saw Hitler. I was like, oh God, of course.
That's where they'd take it.
Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm going to wait. I'm going to reserve judgment and see what happens. But my gut reaction was the first time this show has made me wince and go maybe too far.
We'll have to see. The goodness of Eugene against the evil of Hitler. Like, we'll have to see what Hitler is really like.
That's the thing, though. Like, we know. Like, what are they going to... What possibly fulfilling character interaction will come out of that? Because we know Eugene's really good, and we know Hitler's really bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just going to... it can only amount to comedy. I don't see anything revolutionary coming out of this. And if so, what's it going to be? Is Hitler going to feel bad and be like, oh, I need to get out of this place. I realize all the bad I've done. Because that's not going to be received well either.
Or is Hitler going to help Eugene let go of his Tracy Loach sins?
I don't want that either, because Hitler should not be about self-reflection.
Sympathetic.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? It's a really weird choice.
It's a touchy subject.
And I want to see what they're going to do with it, I guess. But it was the first thing that made me kind of go, ooh, and they've done some pretty gross stuff on this show.
Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting to see more.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how else people receive it. You know, one of the probably fatal flaws of this show and me watching Preacher and being on this show is the fact that I never read anything on Reddit that other people are thinking. And that's a huge mistake that I'm making. I need to go onto the subreddit and read other people's thoughts.
Well, yeah, and that's part of the thing. Like, some of it, I try to strike a balance a lot of times because I feel as though I don't want to be parroting other people.
That's true. And you don't want to have your own read on an episode colored by somebody else. Because I did the same thing with Westworld. I didn't really do any reading on that either. I guess towards the end of the season I started to, because it was just getting too good.
The Westworld thing was different because you're kind of reading into, I was trying to read into the nitty-gritty details of the show, less about criticism and how people are feeling about it. I would be willing to read more about how people are feeling about Hitler being in the show. Like, if that comes to be something that more people talk about, then I would be very interested in seeing more of the editorial take on that.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm being overly sensitive either. Like, I'm not usually one who's overly, politically correct police or anything like that. Like, I'm not usually riled up.
I get the
that.
question comes down to is does Hitler get to the point where we see General Cornwallis in the Revolutionary War as being was there ever a point when Cornwallis was you don't joke about being Cornwallis? Probably not, because he wasn't fucking Hitler.
Exactly.
So that's kind of it's a very weird question.
There's a very small list of things that seem kind of comedically off limits for the most part, and I'd say he makes the cut. So.
But at the same time, you look at something like The Producers.
Yeah.
That movie and that play are all about.
Yeah, that's true.
All about that.
Mel Brooks, though, he has.
Mel Brooks has free reign.
He
apparently.
Can do whatever he wants. Maybe he consulted. Maybe Ghost wrote some of this season.
If anybody has any interesting thoughts about Hitler being in the show, I'd love
any
to
thoughts
hear.
At all? They don't even have to be interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be about Hitler. If you want to tell us more about your feelings on season 2 or season 1 of Preacher, please write in gttpodcast@gmail.com.
Anyway, it probably wasn't worth talking about that much, but it was the first thing that kind of gave me pause and thought maybe Maybe this has gone too far.
I think that's worth noting.
And maybe there is Hitler mentioned in the book, and I've just forgotten it.
Yeah.
It's very possible, because Lance and I were texting yesterday, and I think a little bit today, about some of the things. He did go back and look up for me, because we were talking about it. Jesse does use the word on the Saint of Killers. It works.
And it works in the book.
Yes.
All right.
He doesn't like it, but it works.
Okay.
So it's kind of what we said. People who are under the influence of the word, they know that they are, for the most part. They're just powerless to do anything. And the Saint does not enjoy the fact that Jesse makes him holster his gun and stuff.
I wouldn't think so.
So I do think that check and balance is going to be required in the show.
Yeah.
I think that you need something that's going to put a pause on the Saint of Killers.
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyway.
We'll see. And that was one of the questions that I had coming out of this episode was 2 times that he used the word.
Yep.
And obviously they're in the same night in this instance, whereas, we watched a little bit of time pass.
Yeah.
But still.
Well, we know the Saint adjusted his compass heading, and he's
heading there.
Coming right at him.
But it seemed, it was a little. We're still learning those rules.
I do like to know that people watching the show are now clued into this, so they know that every time Jesse uses it, the Saint is going to readjust and head that way. So it's cool.
Well, but the thing is that Fior told him anyway. They were headed to New Orleans. So it's kind of like he would have been headed there anyway, but does the word help get him there faster or anything?
I don't think so, but
Probably
I think it tells
not.
him exactly where. New Orleans is New Orleans.
It's a ping. It's the last note.
Yeah, Jesse dropped a pin and sent it to him. So yeah, I think it's pretty awesome.
All right, finally, Act 5. It turns out Lara works for the organization she tipped Jesse off about, and she escalates Jesse's case, quote unquote, to Samson Unit. Does that mean something to you?
I think it's just under direct command of Hairstar.
Okay. We cut to the organization and meet Hair K-Star. And Jesse learns from a jazz aficionado that a walk to the peak can be interpreted as the depiction of the end of the world, or a depiction of the end of the world. And Tulip gets surrounded by a group of Victor's men. So, I've already commented on this a little bit. I liked the little note when she starts getting into the van. She says, "You guys could have given me a dog instead of a baby," or something of that sort.
Right away, obviously the guys fell away.
Yep.
Which is very cool. A cool sequence.
Yeah, and she rips the wig off and sits down. And
so as soon as I saw the haircut, I was like, "Oh God, it's Featherstone."
Interesting.
And so that's why when I looked up after the episode, I looked up the cast and I saw Lara Featherstone. I was like, holy shit, because I didn't realize that at first.
I couldn't even remember hearing her name in the episode.
They just say Lara.
Okay.
Yeah, because he says, "I'm looking for Lara." I think he says, "Go see Lara. She's a singer." Okay. When she introduces herself to the Tallahassee guy, she says Lara.
I'm Lara. Okay. Yeah, because I wrote out my notes and then I was like, I should probably maybe know her name, and I just looked it up and threw it in there. But
I don't know in the books if she ever is called by her full name. She probably is, but for the most part, Hairstar and everyone only refer to her as Featherstone. She's like Agent Featherstone.
Okay.
And the guy driving the van is Hoover.
Yeah. Well, the guy driving the van was actually the bartender that told him to go to the
it was?
Chamonix.
I didn't even see.
I believe so.
That would be really cool if it was.
I think that's the case.
Because
he looked very much like that guy.
That guy is, I'm 99.9% sure he's Hoover, and he's like Featherstone's kind of partner, or at least.
Do we want to confirm with credits on IMDb, or would you rather?
If he's Hoover?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I'll see if he
I didn't go
up.
that far in the cast. He's probably Hoover, and if so, that's super exciting. And then we see Hairstar. Hairstar is never named in the book. His first name, so we get a first initial. We get a K. Yeah. That's cool, I guess. We don't need it. I like that it says hair.
Place bets.
I don't know what the K means.
Klaus.
I was going to say Klaus, too. It's awesome. He looks so good. I'm glad we finally saw his face. The scar is perfect. Mm-hmm. He looks great. I'm eager to hear him. I'm eager for him to have something to do other than see the back of him and then see the front of him. We've seen all the sides of Hairstar.
So here's the thing. We can touch back on, I think it was episode 3 of season 1.
Yes.
We see, if you, the listeners, remember, Tulip was apparently doing a job for Hairstar. Or at least for Danny.
Unbeknownst to her.
Maybe linked to Hairstar. But she retrieved a map for Danny, and then Danny takes it to Hairstar, who's watching. We didn't know it was Hairstar at the time, but it was a man in a white suit with a white hat. he was watching a snuff film fest or something in Houston or wherever it was that they happened to be in. So we have seen Hairstar in the show before, but
already rocking the Panama hat.
Yeah,
he doesn't get that in the book until later, actually, and he gets it for a very specific reason.
Yeah,
and I really hope that exact reason happens in the show. I don't know how they'll do it, but they have to because it's so good. It's one of the best jokes in the whole book.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not certain that bartender / driver is in these IMDb credits.
Okay,
as of yet,
it's probably Hoover.
Maybe Tropical Isle bartender. I don't know. No, that's a different guy too. So yeah, maybe we'll see more next episode or something. I will try and confirm that he's the bartender too.
Okay,
but that was the impression that I got when I saw his face. So other than that, nothing else on Harris. They laid down a case file, Jesse's case file. On top of it is something that says pig.
It says pig.
Does that mean anything to you?
Not yet. It probably means something.
Okay.
It might be a reference to the book that I just didn't pick up on.
Okay.
Or it might be something that's going to come back later.
All right.
It's weird though because Jesse's file should probably go on the top.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Of like the pig case is higher priority than him somehow.
The guy
maybe
speaking with the word of God.
Yeah.
And who knows about the disappearance of God?
Yeah.
Yeah, the group's agenda is really interesting, and I really want to know what
they're going to show and say, and
I can't wait.
Other than that, we've got the scene with Jesse in the bar, learning that A Walk to the Peak is seen by at least this other person. I don't know if this is an accepted interpretation of the song, but it's kind of standing on the precipice of the end of the world, essentially.
That's we've gotten several references to the end of the world. It's the thing that Jesse and Tulip say to each other all the time, which they do in the book.
Yep.
So the themes seem to be the end of the world and jazz, apparently, and the two are intertwined.
Yeah. And then Tulip gets surrounded by Victor's men in that laundromat. Obviously, so her leaving was just kind of a, I need to go and deal with this kind of thing.
I think she's going to face it head on.
Okay. Yeah, and that was kind of the impression. It was interesting because I was writing these notes down, and I was going to say something like Tulip gets accosted. But then I was like, no, I'm going to change it to surrounded because I have a feeling Tulip's not going to go without a fight.
I think she will to a point. Yeah. I think she came there knowing that somebody would come to retrieve her.
Okay.
They're going to march her into where she needs to be.
Is Victor? I can't remember if I asked you. Is Victor a name that you know?
No, but I think it's probably somebody.
Okay.
That I should know. It was a cool sequence. I liked feeding the quarters. It was really. It was a good way to draw it out, make it tense.
The whole time I was like, God, cigarettes probably do cost that many quarters, don't they?
Yeah.
Because I feel like she puts like 20 quarters into that machine. But anything else in the episode that you wanna? Any notes that I didn't touch on? Anything like that?
I don't think so.
Are you still excited, or do you feel deflated with the sprinkling that's going on, or where are you at?
I am excited. My appetite has been stoked by a lot of the stuff that happened in this episode. It does feel at times like a lot of table setting still, and I'm not really too excited to tread any more water on some of this stuff, but a lot of elements got introduced into this episode that are going to propel the show forward, whether we like it or not. They have to. Yeah. If there's more like weird stalling, it's not going to make any sense pretty soon because there's going to be so much going on. Yeah, and so I am very excited.
I can't remember if we talked about it on air or not, but the idea that they grouped the first two episodes together, I was wondering when I had heard that they were doing that, if they felt like episode 1 didn't stand well on its own, but I don't necessarily agree with that after viewing it. So part of me was kind of thinking maybe this is like we know that there's a lot of heavy table setting up front, and maybe they're just trying to get ahead on like by week 3 or 4 we want to be here.
That's a good interpretation.
So maybe that'll happen. Maybe that's a generous interpretation, but
I'm really looking forward to next week's. That's for sure. I think it's gonna be really good.
Cool. Yeah. No, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm excited to watch more. That's
shaping up.
pretty much all I have to say about it. Once again, you can find more episodes of our podcast on g2tpodcast.com. That's the letter G, number 2, letter T, podcast.com. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Podcasts. We're also G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can email us at g2tpodcast@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Preacher or our podcast. The Midwest Podcast Network has other shows about video games, horror movies, and HBO's Westworld. Find out more about these shows as well as how to support the network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Our theme music is the song All In by The Red Thread, and it's being used under a non-commercial Creative Commons license. That's all for this episode of Gone to Texas. We can't wait to see what next week's episode of Preacher brings, but until then, go forth and speak the good word.